Guys, today's chat might be one of the most fascinating interviews I've ever done on this podcast. It all started when I was scrolling TikTok one day and came across a video of a man sitting with a harp and saying, "Today at death's door." Naturally, I stopped scrolling immediately. And as I listened, I learned about something I had never heard of before: music thanatology. It's the use of live harp music and presence to comfort people during the dying process. I was completely captivated. The idea that music could meet people in such a sacred, vulnerable moment felt both beautiful and profound. And I knew instantly I had to learn more. So, in true modern fashion, I sent a cold DM and hoped for the best. Thankfully, Tony responded. Today, you'll get to meet Tony and hear about the incredible work he does. His knowledge, compassion, and experiences are truly unforgettable. And I can honestly say that this conversation left me with chills in the most beautiful way. Let's get into it. Hi, Tony. Welcome in.
Thanks, Melody. Good to be here.
Thank you so much for joining me today. I am really excited about this conversation because I actually found you on TikTok. You came up on my FYP and I was fascinated and had never heard of it before. And I think probably most of our listeners haven't either. So, can you tell me a little bit about what is thanatology?
I'm a music thanatologist. So it's really this specific way of using music in end of life care. So thanatology has to do with the study of death and dying practices. It's usually like an anthropological approach. But what I do is really about music at the bedside for people in a hospice care situation. So I'm looking at people in their last hours, sometimes days of life, and figuring out how I can use music to support that process that the body is going through as like the body systems are stopping working together. There's ways that we can support that.
That is fascinating. Now, how did you get into this line of work? Is there schooling or what's involved?
Yeah, so it's a 2.5 year program that I went through. I mean, it's 30 years ago when I got my training. And it's a bit like music school and medical school, or like the first year medical school side by side, because I have to know what options I have musically, music theory and singing and playing the harp and whatnot. But I also need to understand what's happening physiologically with patients as their body systems are failing. And the idea really behind music thanatology is to connect kind of the basic building blocks of music, things like rhythm and harmony and melody, with sort of the basic features of the body, like breath and pulse and tension. Those all have musical correlates. And it's really easy to see how the pace of breath can correlate with the pace of music. And so that's kind of the first layer that we connect with, and then it expands beyond that.
Wow, that sounds really beautiful. What was there a moment when you knew this is what you were meant to do? This was your calling.
Nice. Yeah. So I was working in a nursing home with Alzheimer's patients, and one day people showed up with harps, and it was like a locked unit. So every time the door would open, you would kind of like have to be on guard because somebody might be trying to just wander off. And
Right.
so I heard the door open, and I kind of kicked my head around the corner, and there was people walking in with harps, and I was like, well, there's something you don't see every day. And they went and they saw one of my patients that I was working with for years, and she was kind of all stressed and curled up in like a little ball, just furrows on her face, and nothing we had done seemed to calm her and soothe her. Like we would try like hand massages and like fresh baked bread scents and all these things, and she was just withdrawn and clenched and closed off. And as she was getting towards the end of her life, these people showed up with harps because I didn't understand how it worked, but somebody had called them in. They came in, they played for her, and then after they left, I went and checked on her just to kind of, as my job, to see how she's doing. And all of that tension had drained away from her. Like she was just open and peaceful and breathing easy and relaxed. And I left and I chased them down the hall. I was like, okay, what just happened? Like, what did you do? What was that all about? And they explained they were music thanatologists. They had just graduated from this school. The only one of its kind in the world was in the town of Missoula, Montana, where I had moved to go to school. And they explained about this music connected with physiology, how they had paced this music along with her breathing. And it turned out that that had helped her relax. And I said to them, like, there needs to be more of that in the world. Like, this is what we need to be doing. And they then explained, oh, there's this school is in Missoula, Montana. And it was like, I heard myself say that we need to be doing that. There needs to be more of that in the world.
Yeah.
Like, I heard that echo back into my head. Like, right in that conversation, I was like, oh, that's why I moved to Missoula, Montana, to, like, that's sort of that moment. It was clear. It was just like, yeah, you can't say there needs to be more of that in the world and not sort of be willing to put more of that in the world. So
Yeah.
that was super clear. I was like, oh, that's what I'm going to do. Like, there's my path. Obviously, why would you not do that?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. No, that definitely sounds like it was sort of a clear path laid out for you. Did you have a background in music at that time?
I mean, I had sung in choirs like all through school, and my mother had made me take piano lessons, which I hated, but but I appreciate now. Thank you, Mom. So yeah, I had a musical background, but not everybody at the school did. Like, there was like an investment banker from New York that wanted to do something meaningful with his life. Like, not, and
Wow.
some people came from healthcare, the side of things. Some people came from the music side of things. It's whatever. Like, it just seems to speak to certain people, and they go, yeah, that's the thing that I want to do. And so I think it worked well for me that I had this healthcare background, that I was a certified nursing assistant. I was 24 years old. It was, so I understood how to be around people in a healthcare setting. And I had this kind of basic rudimentary musical background. I had never touched a harp, but I knew music. And so, yeah, it sort of worked for me and I was just like, it all made sense for me. It was clear, like you say, it was a clear path ahead.
Wow. And is harp typically the go-to instrument for this work?
Yeah, so all music thanatologists use harp and voice as our tools at the bedside. And like I said, harp, because I want to bring these really basic building blocks of music, the harp is extremely versatile in terms of its musical options. So I can play just like simple chord, like two notes at a time, just basic harmony. And that's something that no matter how good you are on saxophone, like I love a saxophone, you can't play two notes. Mm-hmm. And so flute, no matter how good you are, you don't get two notes out of a flute. So they can only play melodies. They can do rhythm, but they can't play chords. So I can play chords, I can do big rolled chord. It's probably more dramatic than I would be at the bedside. But the harp is extremely versatile in that I can play melodies and counter melodies and chords, and I can sing while I play it, because voice is this other texture that sometimes we need at the bedside.
Wow. So with one instrument, you can sort of create a really full sound.
Full sound and this full set of musical options. Like, I think of it as my little black bag of possibilities that the harp can bring. And the only instruments that can really do that, pianos can do it. It's hard to move them around.
Yep.
You can technically do it on a guitar, but you have to be quite good on a guitar to be playing a melody and chords at the same time. This is just sort of built for it. Plus the tone of it is really, it's got a very clean sound in the musical world. We talk about timbre. So the overtones that it produces are really pure, as opposed to something like a violin, where it's like the overtones, if you mapped them out, they almost look like a earthquake on a Richter scale. And this is just clean and pure and smooth. And so it's just another basic, it brings music at this basic level where, again, if I play these notes on the harp, you don't really hear the harp. You just hear the two tones. So it's just harmony at its most basic sense. When you hear a violin or a saxophone, you hear the character of that instrument. And this is just clean. And so it gives me the most options, at this really practical level in terms of building blocks of music. But then the harp also, it brings it's got its own presence almost. And I don't mean it in a mystical sense, but when I walk into a room and I set the harp down, and before I've played a note, people in the room go, oh, just look at me. And it's a beautiful little wooden sculpture that I have. And it's also the little bit of a difference. You could bring in an electronic keyboard, it can do counter melodies and harmonies and all that stuff, but it's electronic, and it's never going to get away from that sense of electronics and this
Yeah.
live ringing string. And it's also this thing we don't see a lot of. And so that becomes this sort of subtle, interesting other aspect of bringing a harp into the room, bedside of somebody that's dying. And I don't know how much you want to get into this, but the like people are a little bit lost at the end of life. Families especially don't know what to do or how to be present
Yeah.
sometimes. And I think we live our lives like having certain scripts that we know how to follow. Like when you're at the store, you know where to stand in line, and you know, say the things that you say to the cashier. And like we have our roles that but then you do something different when you're at the bank, and you have different something else when you're, you know, picking up your kids at school or whatever you're doing. But when we're at, like when your mom is dying, there's not a script that society gives us for like, here's how you are supposed to be.
Yeah.
And this thing is happening that you're not prepared for. So it's, I mean, so I paint this picture of we have a little bit of people are a little bit lost in our society when it comes to death, about how to
Mm-hmm.
be around death and dying, because we don't get the weird thing is we don't see death happen very often, like we probably used to 100 years ago. Like
Yeah.
100 years ago, you would have sat with the neighbor as they were like in their last days and weeks. Like it would just part of the community did that. Death got pushed into the hospital, and at the same time, TV and movies started showing us ungodly amounts of death. Like, so we've
Yeah.
seen thousands and thousands of versions of death, but what the movies give us is not what ends up happening at the bedside. You know, and that's what, like, when music thanatologists talk about movies that they saw, you know, and there was a death scene, we all just roll our eyes like, this is not what it goes, like that's not how it is. But when
Yeah.
when families are sort of faced with somebody's death in one of their loved ones, that's the only tools they have is what they've gotten from movies and TV. Like generally, I mean, every now
Right.
and then you'll find somebody that kind of knows how to be present. So mostly people are a little bit lost. But when we have this sort of time together with this music, the really neat thing is, like I was saying, people are looking for a script of how to be, and it's not there, so they feel lost. When you're going to have a harp at the bedside of your whatever mom or grandma or whoever it is that's dying, they know, well, there's no script for how you're supposed to be present when there's a harp at the bedside. Like, and so it's this really cool thing. It sort of frees people up to not have to figure out how they're supposed to be, and they can just sort of be how they need to be. And the music kind of carves out this protected space almost when you bring it in. Like sometimes I'll get called into the intensive care unit. You know, it's like this guy fell off a ladder, hit his head, perfectly healthy guy. Now they're going to take him off of life support. And the palliative care team was like, hey, let's bring music in to help with this transition from the machines to whatever comes after. And bringing music into that setting, it's incredible because it's the hardest decision that family ever has to make. And this seems to soften that a little bit. And again, they don't have a script that they know how to follow. It's just awful circumstances. And yet people hold things in and feel like they were doing it wrong. You know, like people like that need to cry, that can't let the tears out because they just don't know what to do. You start playing a little music and people take a couple of calm breaths and the tears come out and they relax a little bit. It really can transform the space. So all that to say that the harp has these really practical things that it does in terms of these building blocks of music, but it also can just sort of reshape and reframe what's going on in general.
Wow. So it almost creates a beautiful environment, not just for the dying person, but for the family as well.
I think so. Yeah. Like when I first got into this, I was all about how is music going to affect this person? Like it's just going to be almost not even me and the person. It's almost just like the music and this person. And like it can help them and sort of accompany them, like literally accompany them. And it took me a little while to recognize that, oh, the family needs help too. They're going through just as much as the dying person is.
Are you or a loved one exploring long-term care options? Finding the right support can be overwhelming, but it doesn't have to be. One call to Voice Connect Helpline and you'll be connected with an expert who can help guide you through the process. Whether you're wondering about care levels, financing options like Medicare, Medicaid, veterans benefits, or paying out of pocket, or you need specific recommendations that match your needs, Voice Connect is here for you. We're more than just information, we're your partner in finding the right care. You're just one call away from peace of mind. Call 314-919-2403. That's 314-919-2403. What does it look like? You talked about this a little bit, but what does it look like when you're playing for someone at the end of life?
So I'm often getting called in. I work on the hospice team, which includes, like nurse, social worker, chaplain, doctor, volunteer services, and then other ancillary services like me. And so I'm often getting called in, most often, to situations where there's symptom management needs that the nurse is trying to address. So people are having pain, or they're restless, or there's trouble breathing is a really big one. And they've got medicines and kind of equipment that we can bring into those circumstances. But sometimes music is a really helpful additional tool, especially in those cases where people are having difficulty breathing. And so I'll come in and, greet the family and the patient and do an assessment, just like count their respirations, check their pulse. And then I'm really looking at not just the pace of their respirations, but how much effort they are and how deep they are and what the rhythm is. And there's all these kind of subtle aspects to our physiology that it's useful to pay attention to. And then I explain to the family a little bit about what I'm going to do, because there's sometimes this, when you're a musician that walks into a room, they're looking for that script. So we know how to be at a concert, like there's a certain way you're supposed to behave. And I do a lot to sort of dispel that notion. Like, it's not really familiar favorite music that I play. And I'll do a little bit of alternation, a little music, a little silence. Sometimes, we chat a little bit between things. And that's a really helpful kind of tool to get people off this notion of, well, it's a concert and you have to sit and be quiet. If I might start playing sometimes, and then I might ask somebody a question, and I'm talking over the music, and everybody kind of goes, "Oh, we don't have to sit here and be proper," and okay, thank you, that was really nice. They get to just be themselves, and that's part of the work too, is to invite people back into their own space. So I assess that patient, figure out what's going on for them, how much work they're doing, how their breaths are going, whatever. And then I have to start someplace musically. I have to make we talk about these prescriptive choices. I have to tailor something that fits for that moment for that patient. And it often involves, at least initially, pacing the music along with their breathing, and then just seeing how close to the surface they are, how sort of tender is their situation, or how kind of settled in they are. Or it's just, anything can happen. You can make your assessment. You can know from the hospice team what you're walking into, but once you're there, the decisions about what I'm going to play really happen moment by moment. So I might start something and go, oh, I'm just going to start with really simple rhythm, just pacing along with somebody's breath. And then, but within, I played 2 phrases there or something. Within half a phrase in, I might see something going on with the patient where I recognize, oh, that's too loud, that's too soft, I need to add more melodic content. Anything can change moment by moment. And I think the point is that from the get-go, after I make my assessment and start somewhere, the patient is really directing the course of the music just by how their body is behaving. So if somebody's breathing quick and fast and they start to breathe a little deeper and slower, the music slows down right with them. And that's the real difference between what's happening with a live clinical musician at the bedside, as opposed to the recorded music that we can also bring to the bedside. people can play Vivaldi or Beethoven or, AC/DC. It doesn't matter, because sometimes those are really important things for the patient and they can help, but those things aren't going to change in response to the patient's changes. And that's a real big difference. So I think there's a place for that familiar favorite music, but it's never going to do this kind of intimate responsiveness to the patient. And that becomes even really more critical, it feels like, sometimes when I'm seeing people in those last minutes of life, hours and minutes, where they're like dying right now, and the changes are kind of happening, piling on really quickly, and then I can be there and be responsive to those things.
So you stay just really in tune with what the patient is doing and what's going on with them.
I mean, I feel like that's the main part of my job, is to have that kind of attention. Like, it doesn't work if I go on autopilot and start thinking about my grocery list or something. No, I have to be like, it becomes a little bit of this dance where I start a little something based on what I'm seeing. They have a little tiny shift, breathe a little slower, a little deeper, a little faster, whatever it is, a little more work. And then I respond musically, kind of reflecting that back. And so then, like I said before, it's really this literal accompaniment. Like, I'm literally accompanying them, moving alongside. Wherever they go, I'm going to come along with. And the neat thing is, there's not a single way to do that. There's not one right way to accompany somebody. So, like, let me give an example. I saw a guy, this was maybe a month ago, with emphysema. And so he's breathing really shallow and quick because his lungs are stiffened. They don't really expand and contract. And so he was breathing at like 60 breaths a minute, which is really quick. Normally we're in like the 16 to 20 breaths a minute is normal. He's breathing at 60, one breath every second, which looks like a little like it's work, but he's also breathing quickly because he can't breathe deeply. So he just takes more breaths, more shallow breaths. Well, I can play at that pace at 60 kind of beats a minute, or I can play at 30 beats a minute, and we're still together. But I'm not sort of pushing and driving that with that same intensity, but I'm still moving with him. If I'm going at half the speed that he's going, we're still together. I can even go a quarter that speed. I can go 15 kind of pulses or phrases per minute. And I'm still in sync with him, even though it's not a one-to-one synchronization. Does that make sense? Feels like an example.
You play a little bit to show us what that's like.
So I mean, if he's breathing quick, I could play. With every one of those breaths, I can do the same thing at half that speed. I can go a quarter that speed. You can hear, I could go an eighth. I could slow it down even more. And yet I'm still respecting his pattern and like whatever kind of path he's on. And then he can become irregular. He can start to take breaks in his breathing, which kind of sometimes happen. We'll have people at these periods of apnea as their just body goes, I'm going to take a break from breathing. So the music can literally accommodate that in the moment. Like one little change might show up. And again, Vivaldi on your radio is just going to go. Doesn't matter what's happening in the room. I'm really going to be paying attention to whatever little shifts happen.
Are you looking to connect with a community of listeners who understand the unique challenges of caregiving? We want to partner with you. By sponsoring We're at the Age, you'll connect with a dedicated audience of listeners and help make a real difference for those managing the challenges of elder care. So if you're looking to reach an engaged audience, We're at the Age is the perfect fit for your sponsorship. Reach out today and learn more about sponsoring an episode or a whole season. Visit voicestl.org/podcast. What is a moment that has really stayed with you in your work?
I mean, like, so I've been up to this for 31 or 2 years at this point.
Yeah, I'm
And
sure you've got a lot of stories.
well, I mean, I have this challenge because I'll see 3 or 4 people a day for 30
Mm.
years. So, I mean,
Wow, yeah.
I see a lot of people and I see a lot of these circumstances. I mean, the things that stick with you, like it happens sometimes that someone dies when I'm there. And so being present to those kind of really tender moments and precious moments and sort of unique, like somebody's last breaths are these amazing kind of elements or like moments in the trajectory of their biography. Like it's this sort of culminating moment sometimes, and yet it's just a sliver of who
Mm-hmm.
they are and what has happened in their whole, like sometimes it's, you know, over 100-year history of like they've been doing stuff on this planet. And sometimes I'm there for that little sliver at the end. And yet it's this amazing time because I think for them that it's the one time in your life that you have a perspective on your entire life. And I think about that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Like right now, you know, I know what came before, but I don't know what's ahead of me and how much of that there is. But when people are in that really final phase, they can really see the arc of their own history, and that's this amazing time. And that extends to the family too. And it's a real privilege to be present with somebody and to see that what I'm doing is helpful in that circumstance. And I say that because what I will often be seeing is like what I was talking about, people breathing a little deeper or a little easier, or their tension easing. I see these shoulders up by the ears, and then the shoulders come down as people relax. I see furrowed foreheads that smooth, and that's what sticks with me is those little, like, this doesn't fix everything. It doesn't, like, sometimes it's great tragedies when someone is dying, like the guy who fell off the ladder and hit his head. Like, it's not going to remove that tragedy in
Right.
the lives of those people, but it can soften the edge just a little bit, and that makes it all really worthwhile. And yeah, I mean, how much time you got? I can tell you some stories.
Tell me one. Tell me at least one.
Probably if we're looking at the biggest one, like it still sticks with me. And actually, one of my colleagues wrote about it in a book that she put together called "From Behind the Harp," I think it's called. And I had got called to see this patient in a nursing home who was extremely agitated. And the story I got from the social worker, she had really advanced dementia. And the story I got from the social worker was that she was a Holocaust survivor, and she, in her dementia, as she was dying, was reliving a moment from the concentration camps where it's not clear from the family history if it was her sister or her daughter who she saw shot in front of her. And
Oh my
so
God.
I know. And so they had given her just boatloads of medication, these anti-anxiety and
Yeah.
and nothing was touching her distress. And so they called me in, and I come in, and she is screaming and kind of writhing around and crying and keening in, I suppose, Yiddish. And so I couldn't understand what she was saying, and yet you could see the distress, and it was just cycle. It was just like she was stuck on a loop, and she was
Mm.
calling out and crying. And so I spaced some music along with just really simple music, just this rhythm connected with her cycle of like the loops that she was in. So I just like made a little sort of snippet of music that just sort of built with her distress. And then she would sort of collapse exhausted, and then it would just reset and she would go again. And so I just followed that kind of ebb and flow that she was in. And over the course of maybe like 6 or 7 minutes, she quieted and stopped screaming. She could still see the distress, but then after another couple of minutes, and so then the music shifted character when she stopped the screaming part, and became a little more like lyrical, added a little more elements rather than just these simple rhythmic things. And then she got really still and like no more crying, no more writhing around. And I was like, usually I try not to get attached to outcomes, but I was just like, oh my God, thank goodness that she's like not at least like in such distress. And then she said something in Yiddish or Hebrew. I'm not clear how those distinguished exactly, but I didn't understand what she said. And there was like a man's nephew that was next to me, and he leaned forward to tell me what she said, and he got choked up, and and he couldn't finish, just kind of like I'm getting choked up. He couldn't tell me what she said. Our chaplain was there. The hospice chaplain was also a rabbi. He leaned forward and said, "She said, 'Where am I that there's music?'"
Wow.
So, like, this was the thing. It got through that sort of fog of horror because there
Yeah.
couldn't be harp music in that place, right? Like, that's the
Right.
thing. Like,
Yeah.
there's no way. And so it was somehow cracked that shell that she was stuck in. And I remember walking out of there because she stayed calm after that. She ended up dying like a day later, the next day, and apparently had remained calm that whole time.
Wow.
But I remember walking out of there going, like, basically, if I die now, like, I'm okay with that. Like I did what I needed to be here to do. Like, just
Yeah.
what an awful thing. What a terrible place to be. And yeah, it didn't fix what had happened, but she got to be not stuck there.
Yeah.
So like I'm just
gosh,
grateful for that.
That sounds like torture to be stuck in the most horrible moment of your life
Yeah,
in a
right?
loop. I can't even imagine that. How awful. But it
It
seems
was,
like the harp music was almost like a medicine. Like you came in and you played and it provided relief to her, which is incredible.
yeah, it got her out of that. I'm not really sure how, but I mean, from what she said, where am I that there's music? Like, it meant everything sort of to me to see somebody get out of that horror.
Yeah.
It was the best.
It's incredibly meaningful work that you're doing, and it's great that you were able to see how meaningful that is.
Yeah, I mean, I hope there's other people get similar benefit. I don't always see it that clearly, but yeah, when that was like, it sticks with you here. It sticks with me. This was years ago. This was 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And I can sort of see it like it was yesterday, and I'm like as grateful now as I was then. Like,
How has this work changed how you think about life and death?
The weird thing to me is that I'm around death a lot. I mean, so you said you kind of found out about music thanatology on TikTok, and
Yeah, kind of random.
well, right. And so, I mean, so part of my role currently is like you and I had talked about beforehand, is that I'm involved with the school where the training happens, and so I was convinced after much fussing and fighting that as we're putting out the word and we're accepting applicants to the School of Music Thanatology, that we needed to be on TikTok. And so I avoided it for a long time and didn't want to do it because I had to think about how, like, what's an authentic way that I could sort of present this idea about music thanatology on a medium that I'm not native to. Like, I guess it's not, I'm 56. TikTok is not like the main thing that us Gen Xers are up to. And yet I recognize that as we're looking for kind of this next generation of people that want to do this work, it's a good place to expose people. Like you said, this is something you've never heard of. And then here's this opportunity to sort of dig into this. Oh, here's a new thing in the world. And one of the things that one of my millennial colleagues said is you need to have a catchphrase. And there's a couple things that just sort of make yourself stand out. Like I did some of my first videos, my hair is all clipped back. I
Hmm.
got a lot more views when the hair was like, like it's like there's little stuff like that, which I don't love that it makes it about me and like, look at this amazing, strange little person that does this thing. But it gets attention a little bit. And so one of my catchphrase that I came up with was at death's door. I say today at death's door. And then I tell a little
Mm.
story about what I've seen because I sit at death's door every day.
Yeah.
And it's this thing that it's become normal in my life to be present
Hmm.
to death all the time. I mean, this happens with everybody that works in hospice, but even for my colleagues that work in hospice, like I work for a big hospice in the Chicago area, and so there's many different hospice teams within our hospice, and so I get called to every different team for the people that are in the most difficult circumstances usually. And so even, if there's like 30 patients on this team and 30 patients on that team, and there's, I don't know, 6 or 7 or 10 teams. I don't even know how many teams there are actually. Because I just go wherever they call me. Well, like the
Yeah.
people that work on that team, they only see 1 or 2 deaths a week, probably. Like because there's just people that are it's just people are sometimes on hospice for. I mean, the designation is that you have 6 months or less of expected prognosis, but sometimes people beat that and stick with us
Hmm.
for longer. And so anyway, if you're on this team, you might see a couple of deaths in a week, but you might not be present for it. It just might be somebody that you've been taking care of,
Hmm.
but they're calling me to not all the deaths, but all those circumstances where people are really running into rough spots. So I spend most of my time literally at death's door, accompanying people and being present to those families and helping share that perspective. And so, like, in terms of what this job has changed about me, I've become really comfortable in this place that it's sort of not typical to spend a lot of time. And so I have a familiarity with those steps that come right as we're getting close to the end. Like people each take their own path to the end of their life, but they're all
Hmm.
kind of heading to a very similar place. So things start to, converge about like the path that they're on. In terms of, and I mean, even just physically, in terms of like how the body fails. And so I have become really comfortable and really, not comfortable. Like I have a pretty deep understanding of what we're seeing at any given moment in that trajectory. And then I'm able to, I mean, translate it musically to help support that patient that's going through it. But I think really significantly, I can talk to the family about what's happening, kind of what it means in terms of their
Hmm.
process. Because again, people don't have the history and experience to understand the dying process. So I feel really like capable in that, helping people know what to expect. That's really one of the most valuable things I feel like I bring, besides the music and the peace that it can bring the patient, is
Yeah.
this kind of perspective for the families about where they're at. Because people, they wonder, like, how long is this going to go on? Like, what do we expect? What's going to happen? There's not, we a lot of times don't have those answers, but I can give them the tools. Like, here's what I'd be looking for. We can say, here's the signposts that you want to pay attention to. We can't usually say, well, it's going to be 4.5 hours from now. Like, can't do
Right.
that.
Right.
Say, here's the changes that you'll really see before we get to that, and that'll tell you how fast those next mile markers are approaching.
Yeah, that's really important because you're right. I think most people just don't have any clue and haven't had any experience with that kind of thing. Um, so that is really valuable. One thing that we really talk about a lot on this podcast is like end of life planning and having conversations with your family, and encouraging people to really take those, just set aside any uncomfortability that you have and go ahead and have those conversations. But I think these conversations that you're having are just as important for people that are in these situations. I think it's very unfamiliar to most people.
No, but what you say is like really critical because there's an like if everything has gone well, be prior to this point, and people have their living will in place, and like they've designated their powers of attorney and surrogates and whatever, they've done all the stuff that we really need to get done. It's still a difficult circumstance sometimes to lose someone.
Yeah.
But on the other side of that coin, if you're going to have this potentially, I mean, even if their dying is not full of distress, which I mean, in good hospice care, it shouldn't be, it's still really hard emotionally, and like the time, like that sort of, people lose the sense of time, because sometimes it takes days and days you're sitting with somebody, and that can be really its own challenge. But if on top of that you don't have any of the other things like that could have been taken care of, like that kind of pre-planning, even pre-planning funeral arrangements, and like you say, living wills, and all the work that could be, like, if that's not all done, it just makes everything else harder in those last phases, because you don't want to, like, the worst thing that happens is somebody dies, and then, like, I've seen this in the hospital actually more so, somebody dies and the family is in intense grief, and then somebody from the staff has to walk in and say, you need to pick a funeral home. Like, if
Yeah.
something
Then they have to make arrangements while they're grieving, and
while they're
then
grieving,
deal with
so
the
yeah, like,
finances and
the
where are the
more that you could,
passwords.
yeah, right. So the more that can be done
Yeah.
beforehand, like I say, it's already going to be hard enough. You don't need to make it harder by not having that other stuff in place, because it's going to be really miserable,
Yeah. Yeah.
unnecessarily.
Well, if someone is listening to this and thinking, maybe this is my calling, where can they go to get more information or take next steps?
Sure. Well, I mean, like I talked about, there's this school that we have. It's called the Accorda Music Thanatology Institute. That website is accordaschool.org. And yeah, there's information there, and we're accepting applicants for a September start date. And the other place I would send people is to the Music Thanatology Association International. It's the Professional Association of Music Thanatologists. It sets the standards for practice in the field. So the school prepares people to get certified by the professional association, is the idea. And that association's website is mtai.org. So there's all kinds of information there. They could see me on TikTok and ask questions there too. Like, I field a lot of interesting questions there. My what's the term on TikTok? My handle, my name on TikTok is Footleg.
Yes. What does it mean?
What does it mean? The whole thing was sort of I didn't want, like I say, I didn't want to do it to begin with. And so I was just like, fine, I'll just like, ugh. And Footleg is the name that I use as an avatar. Like, if somebody tries to follow me on chess.com, I'm Footleg there too. I think Footleg is funny, and because my name is Tony, which has always struck me like it's just an arbitrary couple of body parts on the lower extremities. I'm just Tony. And so I think Footleg is funny because it's just other arbitrary body parts on your lower extremities.
I see. I get it now.
Yeah, there's not that deep. It's just
That's
Tony.
pretty funny.
It's just Footleg. But it turns out, which I didn't sort of expect, that people remember it. Like, there's like, this cool thing happened on TikTok, which I don't know if we want to get into this, but somebody contacted me and they said, hey, there's this song that somebody wrote on and posted on TikTok, and it sounds like it's about you or what you do. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And so then they sent a link to this gentleman who goes by, I want to say, Fair Hazel. And he had written the song because he had been contacted by a podcaster in Britain who does something called Strangers on a Bench, I think it's called. So he just like walks up to somebody sitting on a park bench, asks if they can talk, and he just kind of gets a little bit snippet of their life story. And so he wrote this story, and then his kind of the thing that he does, this podcaster, is then he reaches out to a musician and says, here, listen to this episode and write a song about something that inspires you from this episode. So the episode ends with a song that has been inspired by the story. And so this gentleman was on the park bench, and they got to talking about death and dying, and like what are you going to do when it's your time? And there are these two polite British gentlemen having this nice conversation, and the guy on the bench says, I heard there's this service sometimes in the hospital where they'll call in a harpist, when you're in your last kind of last hours. And it's like a 30-40 minute conversation that talks about all kinds of things, but the musician took that one little 15-second comment about sometimes there's a harpist that they can call in at the end of life. And so Fair Hazel wrote a really beautiful song called Send in the Harpist. But then the TikTokers of the world heard the song and were like, Footleg, you should check this out. Like, it was really like, and I was like, it's a really beautiful song, and it kind of captures a little bit of that spirit. So yeah, TikTok has turned out to be a really interesting thing. So people can find me there and check out Fair Hazel's song. It's really beautiful. And yeah, people ask me questions there all the time, like about what to do or what's going on, or about music thanatology, or about the harp. It's been a lot more fun than I thought it was going to be. And people are unfailingly nice. Like I thought in going into social media, because you hear the horror stories of people, like I would think it's something easy to make fun of. It's like this dude with all this hair comes in with a harp at some, like, it sounds like something you'd just roll your eyes at. And yet people have been really kind of struck and touched and moved, and like really, like I say, unfailingly sweet and supportive to me. So that's been nice too. So let's keep that up.
Well, that is great. I love that you got a song made. It's also really cool how creative people can be on that app. And when you get, I mean, who could even imagine that someone would create a song based on a podcast episode about somebody's life that was totally random and it relates to your work? Like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. And the TikTokers, the thing was, I think it was the Footleg thing. Like they could, because you could scroll past and somebody had forgotten about me, but then they heard this song and they were like, hey, wait, there was that guy, and they remembered Footleg. And so they could send it back so they could connect the loop. I have since connected with Fair Hazel. Like he seems like a, sweet guy. And so should I play us out? You need a little something to go?
Yes. Let's hear something that you would play in your book. Beautiful.
Well, thank you. Thanks for letting me talk with you a little bit.
Of course. Thank you so much, Tony. I really appreciate it.
You bet. Cool.
All right. Have a good rest of your day.